All right, thanks everyone for sticking it out. You've got 4 media people on stage now, so things could get spicy, and I hope you'll stay and bring your friends. Jyoti, David, and Mike, we're so lucky to have you here. Thank you for coming with us. The phrase new media is baked into the title of this panel. I think we are all, not to age label anybody, but we're all of an age where originally new media just meant the internet. In this context, it's something much more specific, because we're all on the internet now, but we're talking about the social platforms, the video platforms like YouTube, that are growing their audiences in a lot of markets very rapidly and pushing our industry to adapt. And then other trends too, demographic trends, geographic trends. There's so much going on shaping what we're trying to do. And that's why we're here. Because we've got a group that represents different regions, I'd like to give each of you sort of the chance to talk about how the growth of some of these social and video platforms are changing the way you do business. Jyoti, I'd love to start with you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me. And hello, everyone. I think it's appropriate to start with, I come from India and I run the media business for Reliance Industries. And my passion is storytelling. So it's important to talk about India before Geo and India after Geo. So about around 2000 and, over a decade now since Geo launched, India was 155th in mobile data consumption before Geo. And now it's the #1 country in the world for mobile data consumption, more than China, more than anyone else in the world. And Geo has over 60% market share in that. But more...
Geo, just for those who don't know, this is the dominant mobile platform.
Yes. And more importantly, I think we were able to touch the lives of the common man. So, India being an extremely diverse country in terms, not just culture and languages. I mean, we have 22 different languages, 600 different dialects, but even geographically. I mean, it's it's the 7th largest country in the world. And, now a fisherman who had no access to weather forecast is able to go into the storms and know that, is he safe, is he not safe? A milkman, a delivery man, he has a mobile phone, he has data. And so we permanently changed the lives of people. It's predicted that in the next couple of years, there'll be 1 billion screens that we can show content to people through, of which 250 million will be TV and connected TVs, and the rest will all be mobile phones. So I think being connected is permanent, and it's a good thing. Now, when we talk about social media and how it has impacted lives, I'm going to say something controversial, at least from my business point of view. I think 50% of all, or more, 70% of all video advertising revenues, at least in India, going to the social media companies, just 2 of them, Google and Meta, who are shareholders in Geo as well. And how that will evolve and what AI will do, is AI a tool or a threat? We have to get our head around all of those things. But I think gratitude to be in the most exciting times. You were trying to sort of exclude me from the fossil group. But I want to say I'm very much there.
Okay.
In the fossil group, I've seen, DVD, VHS, VCD, to the age that we are in now. I think gratitude to be in the media and entertainment sector during this period. So
never a dull moment.
I'm holding on to the controversial statements for later.
Okay. Speaking of fossils, David, like myself, is in news. Also being very disrupted by these changes in consumption patterns and distribution patterns. But I'd love to hear more about how that's affecting you at Skynet. Sorry, not Skynet, Sky News.
Yeah, I don't think we ever used VHS. Mm-hmm. Maybe.
I'm just post VHS.
Yeah, I didn't expect that to come up. But no, Sky News has been on television for about 36 years. But we have about 800 journalists globally, multilingual services, principally covering and reflecting back into EMEA and our UK market, but in other markets as well, and we're the EMEA and international expression of Comcast, NBC, Universal, and we just did a deal to provide news to the spinoff from that company, which is Versant, and carries some of their legacy cable networks. But look, we're here to talk about how all of that, if you want to call it legacy platforming, is being disrupted. And I think part of the reason we're here in this region, part of the reason we're here in this conversation is because we actually think some of that disruption is welcome and could be an opportunity for us.
Yeah, that's a good way to frame it. Speaking of this region, Mike at NBC, of course is headquartered here in Riyadh and serves the whole MENA region, where you've got very youthful demographic in some nations, but also a lot of some technological challenges in terms of distribution. But
yeah,
how is your company sort of playing these trends?
Well, look, I think if you look at the growth of social media, and as a business that's primarily or majority driven by television, I look at it through the digital video lens, and it's been roughly 15 years where we've seen this growth of new platforms, whether it be YouTube, whether it be Instagram, TikTok, and I think the nice thing we're seeing now is a new normal. And what's happened is the local media companies who have been successful at disrupting themselves, who have been successful at starting digital businesses, whether it be in publishing, whether it be in streaming for us, NBC, with Shahid. It's an AVOD platform, free. It's an SVOD platform. So we've really moved with the times. In Australia, in my prior history with Nine, a very similar world where we moved very quickly. So I think local media companies who have moved with the trend have found their place. And I think the nice thing is we are getting to a new normal. It's not to say that we won't see new platforms or AI might not generate the next thing, but I think that's the challenge again for us. We had to find our way in a world where digital streaming disruption took place and we had to be disruptors of our own business. We have to do it again in the world of AI. We have to be on the front foot and look for the opportunities and be able to sort of weed out the fads and find the things that are going to be the real drivers of growth opportunity in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. On the AI front, there's been a lot of swirling controversy in a lot of sectors about the recent rollout of things like Meta Vibes and OpenAI's Sora, where the ability to do fairly convincing but also entirely fictional video based on real historical, real existing people has already gotten some people in trouble. How do you make sure that the audience sustains your trust at a time when some of this user-generated content can be so easily disseminated? I think that's maybe a good question to start for David as a news.
I mean, look, a huge part of the trust in us, in Sky, or in any established media brand is actually the trust that's conferred on our own talent. And when many people got into this business as creators, might have been, for some of us, that was at a time when the prestige was conferred all and only on the individual from the brand. So I'm on a scheduled bulletin, therefore what I have to say must be important. Now it's much more the other way around. So the talent are coming in with a following, with an audience, and they are conferring some of that on the brand. But it's definitely symbiotic. Now this is why, as relates to some of these newest versions of the technology, look, protection for copyright, protection for our property rights, essentially, is absolutely essential.
Yes.
And you have to have that. At the same time, people discovering our content in different ways than they did under Web 1.0, Web 2.0, that has a lot of promise for us, and we do want to lean into that.
Yeah, I think this world of AI actually creates that opportunity for our trusted brands really to to be that, that stamp of approval, if you like, for the consumer. And, I'm sure we're all very familiar with scrolling through our social media feeds these days and getting this artificial intelligence generated content, just like you say, which, in some cases you actually question, is it true or isn't it true? And that actually drives the importance of brands that have the IP ownership and the trust that people are going to look for. I mean, I know, for me, those are the sorts of things that annoy me in my feed because, they start to blur the line between, is this real news or fake news? So I think our brands begin to shine through in that particular world, and we have to continue to focus in on. It's not to say that, there won't be a place for AI, generated programming. I think we saw in the last panel or two panels prior to this one, some conversation about content creators who would completely build businesses from artificial intelligence. Now, I think that will have its place, but I think in the world of television that we operate in, for artificial intelligence to come up with something that is new, ultimately the engine has to be driven by human creativity. Mm-hmm. And so the message I give to my team, and I spent some time with some of our cast and crew on a few of our new productions recently, is to say, without these stories that come from human creativity as the origin, AI won't be able to generate stories in the future. So, for us, staying true to the heart of creative stories gives us a very strong confidence that it'll always have a place, in a world where AI becomes a bigger part of that ecosystem.
Sure, the tool rather than the replacement for the human creativity. And Jyoti, I know that the studios under your direction are very productive, releasing many movies, but again, you've talked also about AI being a potential to enhance that creativity rather than bring it down. How is that working out in practice?
Oh, I think I definitely view it as a tool and not a threat, and at the same time don't view it as something that can completely replace the human mind and everything that we bring to the creative craft. But can it make the process more efficient? Can we draw up a previous storyboard faster? Can we make some of the post-production more efficient? Can we get lighting done faster? Can we make it a tool to tell the director or the cinematographer envisage how things will, so that so we reduce shooting days and therefore costs, and the money that we actually put in producing a content, can it show up on screen rather than a lot of wasteful expenditure? So I am definitely looking at AI as a means to an end and not an end in itself, and can it be a great assistant for some of the talent that we work with. I concur with what both of them said about talent, brand, trust, the news channels that we run. I would have similar things to say about them. However, the creative industry sometimes goes into sort of this thing that, technology is not a friend. Mm-hmm. I don't think I'm there. I would like to embrace technology. I firmly believe that, AI is not going to replace you, but those who don't embrace AI could get replaced. It's the same as, maybe all those years ago. Today we can't think of not being able to operate a smartphone or a laptop. Yeah. It's a new way of life, and we gotta control how we interact with it.
But I think the mistake, though, that brands could make is if you have consumer-facing content, I would think of it as journalistic, but it could be entertainment equally. If you have that, if you're generating that without it passing through human hands, ultimately you're bidding away your advantage because, of course, the bots ultimately will be able to do that faster, cheaper, and easier than you can. And so our rule of thumb, such as we have one on this, is if the AI can create that story, then we probably shouldn't be doing it because we haven't really done anything that adds value such as people would be willing to pay for it. And we've tried to define in our kind of 2030 plan at Sky, like premium being content that people are willing to pay for. If they can get it for free without us doing it, by definition, they're not willing.
No, I completely agree. That's why I said I think I don't look at it as replacing the human mind at all, but rather as a tool to assist the creative mind.
That's a great way to frame it. Where are you, David and Mike, where are you finding, Jyoti gave some examples of where AI is really making a difference in production. What are some of the early experiments that are paying off for you?
I think the biggest change, and it can be a good one, is that as there's been a lot written about the death of keyword search for news content, but really for any kind of content. And click-through rates, or so-called CTR, is down really dramatically. And in aspects of the news business, not our news business, but just the news industry, I think this has been viewed as an existential issue. But keyword, certainly by comparison with semantic search, which is what world we're going to, really wasn't good. I mean, it wasn't good for journalism because it just incented you to publish, whether you had something unique to say or report or not. Just publish, publish, publish. It wasn't a good user experience. It's the kind of stuff that crashes your phone with clickbait. It wasn't even really great for Sky economically. We were sort of a latecomer to that, and the economics aren't that good. So I think we shouldn't look at new technologies like we're talking about today and try to be defensive of a position that wasn't that good anyway. I think we have to look at semantic and generative search and see great opportunities for big brands and widely cited content. And there's evidence that these models do privilege those two things.
Yeah, that's a great point. Is AI evolving into a useful tool for learning about your consumer? I mean, are you able to identify trends more quickly among your viewers or your readers and figure out how to adapt?
Yeah, I mean, there's a good example that we're using at the moment where we're using AI to look at our schedules for linear television and schedule performance, and actually across our multiple channels, looking at the cost of programming in certain spots versus what they generate. So we're optimizing our schedule using artificial intelligence. That's a relatively recent project. It's been very successful so far, and we're moving that into a world where, like any broadcast network, we have a proportion of our advertising inventory which we use for our own promotional purposes or other purposes. We're also using that same kind of algorithm with AI to look at how do we optimize for what is the optimal way of distributing our own house inventory across the network. So those are two small examples, but right through our production ecosystem, there are more and more examples every day. And I think one of the exciting things is, we're in a boom, of AI at the moment where, companies, it's a bit like the dot-com of 2000. I think it's very similar. The impact I expect could be greater than that boom itself, but it is fueling, a boom of ideas, applications, things that are being developed now. A lot of those things won't turn out to be commercially viable or successful, and they'll fall away, but ultimately there will be a number of things that come out of this boom which become the backbone of many industries. And for us in production, we're seeing a lot of those things come in already. We heard Martin Sorrell talking about production of television commercials, for a client, and the ability to fill a stadium with artificial intelligence generated people. These sorts of things where you can reduce your cost on that part of production and spend it on the things that bring the real stories to the screen is a great outcome, no matter which way you look at it.
Does it tell you to cancel a show, the scheduler thing?
Yeah, look, that's the sort of thing it could do. I'd be
it's not me, it's the bot told me to cancel.
I'd be a little bit wary. Maybe it will tell you to cancel the show. I'd be a little bit wary about, I've always been a big believer that data and, let's say artificial intelligence answers in relation to coming up with what shows you should commission or not always needs to be a mix. And we've seen this time and time again in television. The data can say so much, the computer can tell you so much, but ultimately, it is that creative eye, that understanding of what might fire that really makes the
And data has a way of sort of driving you towards the average and the middle, which is not always where the most exciting creative
Exactly.
Jyoti, you had a
No, I was going to complain about this as a storyteller, that, we are all the time hearing in these rooms. Our data tells us this, our data tells us that, make more crime, make more this, make more. So I think, what we want to do, like he said, is there a clutter breaking idea that can stand out in this, sort of prolific content that is out there in short form, long form, so our creative minds are all the time trying to break the clutter, but then we hear our data says this, our data says that. That's one in terms of creation. But the larger problem comes in distribution and the use of algo when content is being shown. So it's nice to say I made a small movie called Lapata Ladies, which was India's entry to Oscar. So we promoted it a little bit more than normal, and it was on Netflix. And Netflix says 150 countries. Now in 150 countries, your algo is, if he's watching it and he's watching Netflix in the UK, it's not being shown to him because the algo does not believe that he's interested in Lapata Ladies. So how do, we talk about being language agnostic. Okay, I'm watching Narcos, I'm watching, Spanish shows or Korean shows and, Arabic. How do you take Arabic content and make it more mainstream? Just as Hollywood content has now penetrated the world. Hollywood is able to say that they make 30% of their money from domestic market and 70% from international markets. Ours is the reverse. And I would say it would be the same for Arabic content. More revenues from the domestic market and less from the international markets. But if these large platforms, Amazon Prime, Apple, Netflix, the big boys, if they don't promote this content and make it discoverable to everyone, how do we get there?
That's a really interesting point. I'm also thinking about how often you hear about breakthroughs, AI-related breakthroughs when it comes to translation among languages. So you would think that if Google could help me translate English to Hindi and vice versa, there might be something among the big boys platforms that could help Google figure out, or someone figure out, which Hindi content would be particularly attractive to an American viewer or an English viewer, or vice versa. So there seems to be, I'm not saying AI should solve that
They
problem. But it's a
already
good
know
example.
a genre. So suppose they know that this customer likes crime. Can they present a crime series or show or film of a different language to that individual?
Yes.
But that's not happening today.
Yes.
It's very much controlled.
I think, though, that you raise, Jyoti, don't you, that there's two layers to this. So one is a language layer, and how much is local content survive just English language content coming in over it and being translated widely. And I would acknowledge in our own multilingual organization, there's some concern about that as it pertains to AI. Does this just mean more things that originated in Britain or in the US? But there's equally a sort of professional and brand layer over that. So we think one of the things that distinguishes our journalism is its Britishness or its independence from governments, because we sit all within a corporate entity. And so that's part of what your brand is, facing the customer. But you do make a point that most of the great creative enterprises or journalistic ones sort of escaped from algorithmic slop that might have been recommended to us otherwise. It probably the algo says, I just want to watch crime because I live in a particular place. So it sort of takes people to select out of that, or to have the wherewithal to select out of that. If you lose that, that's your whole brand.
I think there's a point to be made, too, that the brands that you all represent and that we represent at Fortune pre-exist some of these technological changes. And so there's something that our audiences are drawing from that is independent from the technology and independent of the delivery system. And we have to make sure we keep delivering on that, not to strain the pun. But that's, I think, a big part of the challenges that we're all facing. Because we're drawing a little bit low on time, I wanted to ask one more question and give you each a chance to respond. Part of the narrative around these digital platforms is that the effect of them is to shorten the attention span of the consumer, and consequently they want shorter form. So in a short response, can you each tell me, do you find that to be true? How are you responding to it? Let's start with you, Mike.
Yeah, look, I think, and in our world, again, through the lens of video and television, that theme is micro dramas and, short form. I think this world of short attention span, social media has created a new demand. I don't think that's the way we're going to consume all of our television in the future, but I think it's substantial enough that it will become part of it, and it is definitely a way that our younger generation likes to see, a different format, if you like, of vertical scroll,
right,
shorter form. But I think that's an opportunity for us. Again, it's an area that we need to be disrupting ourselves in, rather than sitting back and waiting for somebody else to do it.
We invested lately in documentary and started what we call full story films as derivative of our brand. But we wouldn't be doing that if we didn't think that actually the younger audience cohort is more interested in long form, and there's good evidence that they are. Short form is their daily life and just what they're in all the time. But you have to offer something bigger than that if you're going to effectively charge a rent. And all the evidence is that the uptake in documentary on all ours and other platforms is really extraordinary.
I think we also need to talk about monetizability.
Yes.
So I think now, as of now, at least in India, long form content and is what is monetizable. Short form content is there for traffic, which only the Google and Meta are effectively monetizing, and no one else is monetizing short form content today. So I think risk reward. We talked about content creator having distribution peeves, but we are passing on the risk to the distribution partners because they're paying huge licensing fees to license this content. So unless content creators can go B2C and say, okay, I'm going to find my consumer, I'm going to keep my rights, and I'm going to write the risk, then it can have a different play. But until then, this tug of war will continue.
And we're all still that bridge from B to C. Well, Mike and David and Jyoti, I'm so grateful for your time. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with the audience, and hope you enjoy the rest of your global forum.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So the common thread linking this panel, all the other panels we've seen today, is essentially one clear, consistent message, which is that the world is changing very quickly, and the leaders who thrive are going to be those who adapt just as quickly. To share insights on how to harness this kind of change, please welcome Bipul Sinha, who's the Chief Executive Officer, Chairman, and co-founder of our partner, Rubrik.
Good afternoon. I'm between you guys and all the nice mocktails waiting for you. But truly, it's a privilege to be here. It's a very, very exciting time. I wanted to first thank to the Kingdom, the Fortune team, and all of us who are here. You know, AI is such a transformative technology that not only it has 100x more upside opportunity, but also 100x more risk. AI has brought an end to the knowledge economy, and it has created a new economy, what I call intuition economy, where human labor will do intuition work and AI labor will do knowledge work. Because anything that has been codified will be accessible to AI, and it will feed that knowledge to human beings to connect new dots. What is most exciting about AI is that early adopters and pioneers which includes countries and regions, have tremendous opportunity to leapfrog. And that's what is happening here in Saudi Arabia. The energy, the excitement, Vision 2030 has really created a momentum with Saudi Arabia leading and rest of the Middle East following what I call is the new Europe. Because in this era around AI and services, we are in the early innings of a giant transformation that is happening in the region. Every company I speak with, they talk about 30, 40, 50% growth rates. As you know, most of the companies in other parts of the world talk about 3 or 5% growth rates. If you compound 30% growth rate, we are at the outset of a massive transformation where a lot of builders and pioneers will come to Saudi Arabia and build the AI future, build the hospitality future. That's why I'm excited. Rubrik is excited to be in this market. This is truly the beginning of a massive transformation of the region and the economy. This is the time that we should all think about how do we take advantage of this opportunity. With that, I want to conclude the day one of Fortune. Let's have this conversation continue and see you all at the gala. Thank you so much.